We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. And we might have mixed up Tom because this is episode 680. And he's like, where did 679 go? Well, behind his back. Lee and I recorded an episode. That's what happened.
You. I specifically told you not to do that.
I know you did. That's why we did it behind your back.
Such duplicitous people.
You're not the boss of me, Tom. That's what's going to happen.
The boss of the podcast. I'm not the boss of much. I'll be honest with you. Around here, I control dinner. That's pretty much it.
Choose not to post the audio-only version. You do have control of that.
Oh, I know. I need to get that thing edited together. It's not that big of a deal. I don't know what it is about this semester, but the beginning of this semester has just been crazy. It just seems like I'm always going, and it's not like it's just school stuff. I just got a text from my wife. She's like, "Oh, your youngest has a orthodontist appointment today." I'm like, "What? He's 10. What does he need an orthodontist for? I mean, his teeth are like, looks like a very badly carved pumpkin. What does he need an orthodontist for? Maybe because his teeth looks like a very bad
that
carved
would
pumpkin.
likely be the reason. Get started now."
But I don't know. So I'm sorry. I will try to get that posted up soon-ish.
No,
I
sure.
wanted to do it today, but again, I was woken up at 8 o'clock in this. I woke up before that, but I woke up this morning early to take my son to school because he's junior honors society.
Gotcha.
I said, "What did you do there?" He goes, "I don't know."
Yep.
That's the kind of riveting conversation you get from your children when they're 13 years old.
Well,
the sort of edge of your seat storytelling that I get to experience around the dinner table when I say, "How was your day at school?" Fine.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the standard answer. Well, over here, I'll just reiterate for folks, we had 2 episodes that posted last week. We will have 2 episodes that post this week. Don't get used to that. That's not what it's going to be going forward. 1 episode from now on, we're back to normal, even though we have a huge topic list today that we're never going to get through.
Yeah, that's fine. It's fine.
Yep.
It's fine. Nobody's crying that we haven't gotten. What was the last time somebody complained about a question taking too long to be answered? It was because we forgot. It didn't make it to the list somehow.
True.
It flew underneath the radar. Nobody has ever said to us, "You took 3 weeks to answer my question."
That's good. People understand the drill.
It is. It's fine. You guys all understand. Speaking of people who understand, I got to meet with a listener this week.
You did indeed.
Yeah, and he was super lucky because I don't check my email very often for the AVRant email because it's full of spam. But he hit me up like Friday night and said, "Hey, you want to get together on Sunday?"
Now, am I allowed to show this photo? He shared it on Facebook. I'm assuming it's fair game to show.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, you can share it.
All right, here we go. Here is Tom and Patrick P. They met up.
That's right.
In real life.
His wife took that picture. Yeah, it was very nice. Him and his wife were lovely. The thing that continues to impress me about AVRant listeners when I meet them, and I don't meet them very often, but when I do meet them, I haven't met anybody who was like, super weird.
Thankfully.
just a really nice couple, really a really nice guy. They're in town for some family related shenanigans, and said, "Hey, we're close enough to St. Pete." They weren't exactly in St. Pete, but they were 30-minute drive away. Let's meet up. Basically on the way back to the airport, from what I understand. Because they were flying out that day.
And this is the type of picture you have to take now, where hands are visible, so no one's holding a selfie stick. It's a necessity these days.
I didn't. That's not. I mean, it is what it is. But yes, we were not holding a selfie stick. His wife took the picture. I actually kind of regret that she wasn't in the picture. She was funny. She's like, "Oh, I don't listen to your podcast." I'm like, "No."
Shocking.
She goes, "But I hear him listening to the podcast, so I recognize your voice."
Yes.
So yeah, they're very, very nice. Again, it was great. Also, I asked him about the system, and he's talking about his TCL 6 series that he just got.
Nice.
Really excited about that. He got a Yamaha receiver that he got from Woot. And Klipsch speakers all the way around, no subs. I'm like, we all start there, man. That's what we all start there.
Some of us start with a lot less than that. That's for sure.
No kidding. Yeah. Oh, I'm sure that he's been married long enough. I think 3.5 years to what he says. He's been married long enough where you can start spending money on gear. I think he's getting there. But and I told her, I'm like, listen, we don't try to get people to spend money. So if he comes to us, we're going to tell him to buy an SVS sub, but it's actually a good deal, so
and
don't
two
worry
of them,
about
and
it.
they'll show up on a pallet. Be prepared.
Be prepared. Lift with your legs. But super nice, and I want to thank Patrick for inviting me out. It was great. It was nice lunch, and just kind of hung out and talked about them and the area, and a little bit about audio and stuff like that. So
Cool.
It was really cool.
Very nice.
So if you're in St. Pete, I'm always available, I guess, to do stuff. Not always, but you might want to give me a little more heads up. Patrick super duper got lucky. I almost never. I checked that email because I emailed our Ash, right? Ash is his name.
Yes, Ash is the fellow who does our artwork. That's correct.
Yeah. I emailed Ash, was asking him some questions and stuff, so I was checking for a response from him.
Ah, right.
And that's the only reason why I caught Patrick. So Patrick, thank Ash. So let's get into this podcast. We want to start off, as we always do, thanking our listeners of the week. To be a listener of the week, all you have to do is support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to patreon.com/AVRant podcast and sign up for a subscription. The subscription service basically takes money away from your accounts every month and gives most of it to us. So we want to thank our 105 patrons. 105. That's what we need, is a buffer. A buffer between the 100, because it varies, and that's fine. I understand completely. People's situations change. So 105 patrons. So we want to thank and if you become a patron and you want us to mention you in the podcast, or if you're a continuing patron and you just want every once in a while want to hear your name, let us know. So Andy, Mike A, and Mike H. We want to thank you and the other 102 patrons over at patreon.com. Thank you, guys.
That is right. Thanks so much to our 105 patrons, Andy, Mike A, and Mike H. Thank you for being 3 of them.
Yeah. And let me see. Oh, okay. I'm reading this for the first time. So DJ is a listener who does the Bright Side Home Theater podcast. I've never heard of it. Okay. And he gave us a nice shout out, including links during his review of Gemini Man. So he was one of the people that had to sit through Gemini Man. So that's exciting.
No, it's the home version. It's the 60 frames per second on an Ultra HD Blu-ray disc. So yes, he referenced the review that Lee and I did together a number of weeks ago, and so that was very nice. Included links back to AVRant, so appreciate that, DJ. DJ's the guy who did the false wall at the back of his room that we talked about there just last week. So
right.
Right. Yeah, that's it.
I one of the things that sometimes happens with podcasts and other things like that is people are like afraid to mention other people because you'll somehow lose listeners. That's just
no,
ridiculous.
Podcasting doesn't work that way. Everyone check out the Bright Side Home Theater podcast. DJ, he's on his own. He's reviewing the things that he watches in his own home theater. So he's reviewing the home release version of things, and whatever sparks his interest, that's what he talks about that week. So check it out.
Is it 2 hours long?
No, it's like 20 minutes long. It's much more digestible. And
so if you're almost done with your workout and we're done with our podcast, then you can
that's
go
right.
hit DJ.
It's your cool down. Anybody who would like to do a one-time donation and doesn't want to join up at Patreon for an ongoing monthly subscription, come to avrant.com, our website. Over on the right-hand side, it says support AVRant, and that'll take you to PayPal, where you can do a one-time donation. You don't even need a PayPal account. You can just use a credit card right through.
Sounds good. We also want to mention once again that Turn Toast won our prize draw for the model.
That's right. We'll put him in touch with Andrew L. as soon as we get in touch with Turn Toast. We've reached out to Turn Toast, so hopefully we will hear back.
And it looks like we're going to be doing an interview coming up with the owner of HTMarket.com. We have recommended them before because of their home theater seating.
Yes, they have their own line called HT Design Home Theater Seating. It's recliners, most of them motorized, some of them even with motorized headrests, but nice features at very reasonable prices. Right. That's why it's easy to recommend them. So yeah, it's going to be fun talking with Alan. He's the owner over there. We've set that up for February 19th. That's a Wednesday coming up in a little under a month from when we're recording this today. We are mostly going to be talking about home theater seating, but HT Market sells a whole plethora of devices. So if you have questions about HT Market specifically, with a focus on home theater seating, great. But if it's something else that HT Market deals with, send that on into us.
All right.
We'll try to get it answered. Speaking of which, got to send your questions to question@avrant.com.
I know. I was thinking I somehow skipped that, but whatever. Yes. Yeah, this is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You go to avrant.com, leave us a comment there, facebook.com/avrantpodcast. Probably the second best way to get in touch with us other than just directly by email. YouTube.com/avrant if you want to see our videos. Rob@avrant.com is his email. At First Reflect is his Twitter. I'm Tom@avrant.com. My Twitter is @avrant_Tom. Mm-hmm. So we promised, and now we will deliver a spoiler-full review. I don't know if I'm even talking about spoilers. I don't think it really
how much do we have?
The Rise of Skywalker.
Yes, Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah. Or as I call it, the great J.J. Abrams walk back of everything that happened in the movie before.
You can't entirely eliminate The Last Jedi. There are things that would not make sense without it.
He certainly tried. That's for sure.
It definitely made me wonder, gosh, what would this have been like if the entire trilogy had been made by J.J.? Because the first, I would say, 20 minutes to half an hour are almost like, I'm pretty sure he would have put this into his version of Episode 8 had he done it. The Emperor returning would not have been a surprise, he's back. I think there would have been hints dropped of that had JJ been the one making Episode 8. And it was a little bit of catch-up being played there. But if there were a way to just sort of like gloss over The Last Jedi and some of this had been an episode, I'm like, it actually does work well, the JJ to JJ part. There's this kind of interlude in the middle that feels out of place. Yeah,
I completely agree. I'll put it this way. This is the way my wife, who isn't a videophile, audiophile, doesn't pay that much attention to movies, has a hard time following movies that are complicated, that sort of thing. She's just more of a, she needs things to be a little bit easier to understand and that. And honestly, Star Wars isn't exactly the most even this movie is not the most complicated things you've ever seen. But she said the first half of the movie was boring and confusing, and then it kind of got okay. It's pretty much much her review of it.
That's fine.
So, which I can understand. So, I loved The Last Jedi. I loved it. I loved The Last Jedi. I thought it was right, perfect. Like if the first movie essentially aped the plot and everything from Star Wars, which it basically did, then the Last Jedi essentially aped the theme and the tone of Empire, and it did it. I think except for the interlude on the stupid planet with the gambling plan and stuff like that, except for that bit, which I think is not necessarily. I think for the story it's important, but it was just way too long.
I felt it was more like, we got to give Finn something to do in this movie, and that's what they came up. That's what it felt like to me. But
yeah, maybe. But I felt like the theme of there's other force sensitive people out there.
I see. Yes, yeah.
And then talking about how war is essentially the major
getting into
industry.
Some shades of gray, yes.
Yeah, which was fine. But it was just far too long. But other than that scene, and I mean, there were other plot holes that kind of bothered me. But in general, I felt like it was as good as Empire, or right in the same line of Empire. And then this one was like, nope. No. We are going to listen to all of the internet trolls. And let's be honest. And J.J. Abrams, I believe I saw a quote where he said, I have a hard time ending things. And if you've ever seen anything J.J. Abrams has done that's long form, you know that's true. The first season of Alias was fantastic. And then the second season where he's like, okay, now all the good guys are bad, all the bad guys are good, and everything's very confusing, and I don't know what I'm doing. So I really felt like this was exactly what you said. Like if you took the what's the first one called? I already forgot.
The Force Awakens.
Force Awakens and The Rise of Skywalker, and you put them together. That's a series of movies, and The Last Jedi stands by itself because it is tonally
if you're taking
completely different,
indispensable plot points of The Last Jedi, I mean, you can't just. Luke is suddenly dead, and we're not going to explain that whatsoever.
Right.
Okay, so that's an indispensable plot point. If that had somehow been in a non-existent second movie that JJ had made, then that it flows through well with The Last Jedi not entirely fitting in what has ended up being this sequel trilogy. But here's the thing. So what is your overall feeling of The Rise of Skywalker? Pause.
Disdain?
Okay.
I feel like everything, all the hope I had after The Last Jedi, all the things I thought, all the places I thought we might go, all the brave, and I want to call it brave new directions that this series could have gone in by saying your parents were nothing special. By saying that, it was like, we are not going to follow along with this.
It's part of bloodlines and
like almost imperialistic, king and queens. If you're not related,
like royal bloodlines, basically.
If we're gonna deviate from that, and we're gonna come up with a
definitely full on reverse. That is full 180 on that part.
And they went nope. Instead of that, we're going to do exactly the opposite of that. And that, to me, that was a huge slap in the face for everything I hoped that. When that happened in that movie, I basically checked out as far as the plot.
Gotcha.
As far as believing that this was going to be anything that could be good. At that moment, when they basically said, oh, yes, your parents were nothing special because they were absolutely something special.
Very much so. Very much so. Yes. Okay, so this is interesting for you and I to discuss because I greatly enjoyed The Rise of Skywalker.
Okay.
And the reason is I come at Star Wars looking at it as I want modern day Greek tragedy. I want opera. I want black and white good versus evil from the main saga movies. That's what I want out of those. For all the shades of gray, for all of the, things are maybe not exactly what you expected based on the saga movies, I'm fine with all of that being in the TV shows, the comic books, the periphery. But for the main Skywalker saga, I want cut and dry Greek tragedy. And I had a huge grin on my face because there was a literal chorus going on in this movie. All of the, whatever those Sith people were whose faces you never saw, I'm like,
yeah, right.
There's
by
my
the
Greek
way,
chorus.
I cloned myself
Thank
a
you.
bajillion times, and there they all are because it gets real freaky down here.
There's my chanting Greek chorus, and I liked it. I very much disliked the entire side plot of Rose Turco in The Last Jedi. I was not a fan of any of that. So, I am fine with her being completely sidelined in this movie. And I wanted to get back to the original three people that we met in The Force Awakens. That's what we did. They were back together. They were a team again. Rose had nothing to do with anything.
But they weren't a team, though, because they were almost never on screen together. She just kept wandering off by herself.
They were much more
things.
of a team in this than they were in The Last Jedi, though. In The Last Jedi, the three of them were completely separate,
right.
Which I get it. It's
but
the
they
middle.
were almost completely separate on this one too. She was just like every time they turned her back, they're like, "Where the hell did she go? Where is she? Where's Ren? Is she's in the bathroom again?" It's like my 16-year-old child. Every time I turn around, he's in the bathroom.
But
where did he go?
It was interesting to me that I am the opposite of a lot of people. I understand completely where you're coming from, and I think there are the people who want to see Star Wars essentially evolve and go in new directions and do some new things. And then
I'm
there are the
okay
people...
with the black and white though. I don't mind that there's I don't think that it has to go into like a huge shade of gray or whatever. But what I did like is that We had no idea where Snoke was from.
Yep.
I didn't even think Snoke was dead. I'll be honest with you. I didn't think Snoke was dead.
Well, there's other Snokeses, aren't there?
Well, apparently. But I didn't think Snoke was dead. The explanation for all that was just super
that was
dumb.
very glossed over in Rush, but it was in there. There were people who were saying it wasn't explained at all. I'm like, well, no, there was a line.
There was a line.
Literally
in a
saying what it was.
2.5 hour movie.
So maybe
there was a line.
Maybe if you weren't looking down at your iPad, dear reviewer, and writing ahead of time, you would have caught that bit. It was in there.
Yeah. No, so I'm okay with the black and white, but I think that the direction that it could have gone in could have been so much better.
It's the could have, yes. I was very happy with what I was happy with the reverse course. I'm like, yep, that's kind of what I wanted. And I thought so one of the things that always stood out is in The Force Awakens when we first meet Rey and we hear her theme music by John Williams for the first time. And people picked up on this. It's like, hey, that's the exact same chord progression as the Imperial March. And I'm like, he put that in there all the way back there. And I'm like, yay, it paid off. It's like the musical theme paid off. It's like, yeah, she's a Palpatine. That's why her theme song is the same as the Imperial March, the chord progression of it anyway. So I love the music. Nobody is faulting the music. I would actually hope of all the Star Wars movies that this score wins an Oscar because it deserves it. If you actually look at how thematically he tied every theme back together. I'm like, that's pretty darn masterful, which, of course, we expect nothing less from John Williams at this point, but that was awesome.
So I don't know how true it was, but they did say that the reason that Rose was not in as much of it as she should have been was because her scenes were all with Leia.
Yeah.
And the CGI just...
I don't buy it. They totally sideline that character.
Yeah, I don't buy it. I don't buy it either. I don't. That's what they say.
How else would you, I mean, she's not part of the main three characters, for sure. I mean, even the excuse of why there isn't as much of her in the movie is that she was with Leia, not with the main three characters. So, no, I don't buy that.
Yeah. I really feel like this decade or so of, and maybe just the last 5 years of internet trolls having way too much control.
There is that.
Influence on what's going on in the movies.
I mean, it's going both ways now, though, isn't it? Because the overwhelming vocal thing out there is how much everybody hates the Rise of Skywalker. I'm like, nope, I don't hate either of them. I don't hate The Last Jedi. It wasn't my favorite, but I certainly don't hate it. I don't hate either of them.
I was this movie, much like I felt the Return of the Jedi, was going to validate and make everybody look back on the Empire and say, "Wow, look what they were building towards." And now, the I am your father, in Empire, built towards this whole. Not only is he the father of Luke, but he's the father of Leia as well. And oh my God, now it's all kind of tied together and blah blah blah. And you look back, and you're like, okay, we were building towards something. The Last Jedi, it's like. We're building towards something, and then there was no payoff there, and it just not only no payoff, but there
was a little bit of I don't like that reverse.
Yeah, like let's do a U-turn here and go back to happy fun time. I don't know. I mean, okay, so I really hate how the internet and people treated Rose. She's a character. She's an actor. She didn't write the lines. Oh, I mean, she has nothing to do with
the
it.
actress. I'm like, come on, that's ridiculous.
But she got absolutely. I mean, people. I mean, and I as we were watching the LSU, whoever Clemson game, whatever the national championship was, or whatever that was, or I don't remember. My dad went to LSU, so I have to watch this stuff. And they were saying on how people were sending death threats to the family of the quarterback or one of the players because he was changing schools.
Yeah,
I'm like, who are you people? Will you stop sending death threats to people? I mean, they've got lives, they've got reasons for doing the things they do, and especially actors. And then if the character's not that popular, fine. Give her a little something to do, which she did in this movie. She had a little something. She was in there. Her face was there. She got paid. And then but that's still not her fault as the actress. It's the fault of the writer and the director.
She got Jar Jar Binksed. That's what happened to her.
But Jar Jar Binks still got FaceTime. Holy
that's
moly, he was still around.
Got a little bit of time, much less than the previous movie. All right. Well, all that really matters is what did you think of Babu Frick? That's all that matters.
Who?
Babu Frick, the little alien dude who reprogrammed C-3PO.
Oh yeah, he was funny. Yeah, the kids liked him.
That's right.
That's all that matters.
Well, we can all agree
Toys.
we all love Babu Frick. The end.
Uh, I will see it again. I will watch it again. When it hits Disney Plus for sure. I'm going to watch it again. I'm hopefully not going to hate it as much as I didn't walk out hating it, but my entire family, every single one of us, walked out going, we really should, because we saw it while we were on vacation in North Carolina. We took a day and we actually had to restructure our day around going to this movie. And when we got out, I looked at my wife. I said, I wish we hadn't. I wish we had done anything else. We could have done other things that were more fun than this. And everybody, even the 10-year-old, was like, "Yeah, I wish we had done something else."
Well, you couldn't have known that before, so
no, we couldn't.
It's all right.
All right, that was our review. In the news, Yamaha is the first AV receiver brand to announce their 2020 lineup of models with HDMI 2.1. The Avantage series gets a new look for the chassis and simplified block numbers. Block numbers? What the heck? Model numbers. RX A2, A4, A6, and A8. Oh, good.
Mm-hmm.
They specifically mentioned supporting optional HDMI 2.1 features, including low latency mode, variable refresh rates, and quick media switching. I like when the switching just keeps getting quicker and quicker, and yet we still have to wait for it. it's
supposedly
still
not
anymore.
Quicker. Supposedly no more blank interstitial screen, just instantaneous.
Yeah. We'll see. Though, but only the flagship RX A8 can do the 11 speakers. Only can do 11 speakers, can it? All by itself? Good job.
But it's the only model that can. I mean, Denon and Marantz, at least one down from the flagship, can also, or in fact, two down from the flagship now in Denon's lineup.
Yeah,
can do 11 speaker processing, but nope, only the flagship and Yamaha. They haven't changed that.
I wonder if that has something to do. I mean, I don't know why, but I wonder if that has something to do with them either not wanting to compromise the amplifier power that they have, or just saying this is not something where people are really taking advantage of, and the people that do don't mind buying amps. I mean, I wonder what the thought process is behind not adding more channels to these things. If we interviewed somebody over there, that's the first question I would ask them. All right, Warner Brothers and Universal are merging their physical media distribution operations. This is a way to share costs for physical disc distribution instead of each studio distributing its own discs in every territory. Warner will distribute both in some territories, and Universal will distribute both in other territories. Streaming distribution and marketing remain separate. So, yay? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, it's
the discs aren't going to get any cheaper. We know that.
No,
right?
no.
So.
But it's just a sign of the times. Folks who are pointing to this as the death of discs. I'm like, no, certainly not yet. But this is a cost-cutting measure, no doubt about it. I think it makes perfect sense for them to do this. It's like, why not partner up on something like that? But yeah, we're going to have discs for at least another 10 years yet. But this is one way that they can keep it viable. And as long as it keeps it viable, good, because I still want to be able to get discs from time to time.
I do as well. So NBC Universal streaming service Peacock has officially been announced as launching on July 15th, 2020, but only in the U.S. And apparently nobody ran that name by any teenager ever.
Nope.
Because that right there has got...
It is NBC's symbol.
I understand.
The Peacock
It doesn't
network.
matter. It doesn't matter. Things screams porn is what it screams.
Oh, dear.
No international plans have been announced, and no confirmation about supported video or audio formats.
Yeah. I don't trust them to put everything out in 4K HDR with Dolby Atmos. I don't trust them.
I don't care. I'm not getting another streaming service.
Yeah, right.
My wife has already given me the stink eye whenever she looks at all the streaming services we have right now.
Yep.
So there will be a Peacock free tier.
That's what it's called. Peacock free. Yep.
Nobody listened to this name as they said it out loud.
I think they enjoy it. I think they purposely did it.
Yeah, maybe they're a bunch of giggling middle schoolers.
Absolutely.
There will be a Peacock free tier that has ads in a limited library. $10 a month gets you Peacock Premium with no ads in the full library. And if you are already a Comcast Xfinity customer or a Flex customer, you can get Peacock Premium for $5 a month, plus early access starting on April 15th. So, whatever.
Yep.
Keep in mind that HBO Max is launching in May for $15 a month. Everybody, mark your calendars.
So
Not
all
HBO,
the streaming services are going to be out there in the summer. It'll be a fun time to see it all fight it out.
20th Century Fox is no more. Disney is rebranding it as 20th Century Studios, and Fox Searchlight will become Searchlight Pictures. That's right. They went fox hunting, and they got him.
Yep. And we'll have to see, since they just put the 20th Century Fox fanfare back into the Star Wars releases on Disney Plus. Because people are like, oh, are they gonna have that? Because that fanfare was there in the original movies. Well, they put it in, but now people are like, are they gonna go back in there and scrub out the Fox part of that and just write studios beneath it in Sharpie? Maybe.
That would be awesome. All right, I got one quick comment here, but it's not quick. Martin wanted to note that quite a few people online have complained about failing power supplies in the Epson 5040 UB projectors, including getting a replacement from Epson under warranty only to have the replacement unit also fail. While Epson has never issued an official statement or a recall, anecdotally, the 5040 UB seems to have a higher failure rate, almost always the power supply. So for those considering the 5040 UB versus the 5050 UB, Martin just thinks it's something to consider when weighing the price difference. Yeah, dude, the price difference was
more than double at this point.
Yeah, last time, the refurb units I saw were I looked at them and they were $11.51.
Yeah.
Okay, but then I went back like a week or two later and it was $12.99.
Okay.
But still, that's
still twice the price.
Ridiculous.
Will get you a 50.
Yeah. I'll take the chance with the failing power supply and the refurb unit directly from Epson with factory warranty.
Yeah.
That's me.
It would be a good idea to use it, make sure it isn't going to fail on you. But the thing is, nobody has said that Epson has been unwilling to service or replace things under warranty. I don't entirely doubt that there probably is a slightly higher than normal failure rate. There is more chatter about it than is normal. But at the same time, 5 people on a forum can make it seem like hundreds because they post over and over and over again, and in every single thread where the projector is mentioned.
They search threads.
Exactly, the same people will come in and talk about it. So you got to you got to take everything with a huge grain of salt when you're hearing it on forums, because a small number of people can seem like many, many more because they repeat it over and over.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the questions here. Only a near hour into this podcast. Tom, not me, different guy. He's got a much nicer theater than I do. Tom has been using a projection screen that he made himself from a piece of white laminate. It's been great with his JVC RS540 projector, but now he's thinking that he would like to try an acoustically transparent screen so he can have his Ascend Sierra 2 speakers directly behind it instead of angled up from below. He'd like to keep the price below $1,000, but he already has a DIY frame that he could use. If it's possible to just get the acoustically transparent screen material and attach it himself. He also doesn't want to lose image quality and a ton of brightness compared to his existing laminate screen. So what do we suggest? Well, I mean, the only place that I know that still sells just the material is Seymour, right? I don't know that anybody else does.
For good acoustically transparent, yeah, absolutely. We're gonna send you to Seymour.
I don't know. Is that $1,500 though? I mean, I don't know how much he charges for the.
Oh, for just the material? The material is very reasonable. You can get the screen size that Tom is after here for I think it's only about $400 or something like that for just.
And do they cut it to size for you?
They will cut it. They will cut it to size for you, including if you go with their brightest, which is what Tom would want to go for. That is their Center Stage XD, not the ultrafine. The ultrafine is lower brightness, but Tom is not sitting so close that he needs the ultrafine. So you can go with their regular Center Stage XD material. It is their brightest acoustically transparent, and if you tell them the size of screen that you want, they will actually sort of like angle cut the screen out of the fabric, because normally the weave is 90 degree left to right, up and down, which can get you some moire pattern. It's tough to see, but it's possible for it to happen. But they will actually angle cut it so that all of the weave is at a slight angle. It's not perfect up and down perpendicular. And I think they charge like $30 more or something like that to give you the angle cut, which is like, just do it, because you will never know. It still comes in a tube, perfectly rectangular, and unless you get right up there with a magnifying lens to see that the weave is not perfect 90-degree hatch, you'll never notice. So yeah.
How, out of curiosity, I mean, when you get the blank or the raw screen, how do people normally attach it to their frames?
Seymour just suggests staples.
I was going to say, it can't just be staples, right?
That's what they suggest, in fact. If you've just got a nice wooden frame, just staple it in there. I think they say on the XD, I better not. They say on their website, but I think one of them was like every 3 inches, and then the ultrafine, I think they say do it every 2 inches. But the more the merrier. Go staple happy. You're distributing that pressure.
Still with Tom here. He constructed his theater room first. I'm sorry. He constructed... I'm going to have to get my eyes checked because I'm seeing words that aren't there today. I just started drinking coffee when we started this podcast, so that could be part of it, is the caffeine messing with my apparent everything. He constructed his theater room so that on the back side of his screen wall, it's actually still open to an unfinished area of his basement. What looks like the front wall of his theater is really just some non-load bearing framing and a single layer of drywall. His front speakers are currently in a cabinet stage just constructed below his screen with a small amount of absorption behind them. If he moves his speakers so they're behind the projection screen, he'll have to make some holes, and then the speaker will be completely open behind them to the unfinished part of the basement. So does he need to make some sort of enclosure for them? No. No.
But it would mean these are rear-ported speakers, the Ascend Sierra 2. I think he's actually upgraded to the EX now, since it's got those phase plugs in the mid-range driver. But they are a rear-ported speaker, and like it's not that he just has a stick frame behind his screen. He has a stick frame with, I believe, 1 layer of drywall. That's the way I read his description anyway. I might be wrong about that. But if it's like 1 layer of drywall and he's going to put holes in the drywall to house the speaker, well, you're losing all of the bass that you would have heard from the port. They'll still work just fine. It's no problem. You might have to use a slightly higher crossover from your subwoofers to your speakers. That's possible because you won't be hearing that bass output from the port contributing to the sound. So it'll work. It's fine. You don't need to put an enclosure behind the ports of the speaker. That is definitely not something you need to do. I'd almost there's no real way to
just
try it because it means putting a hole in your drywall either way. That's kind of a difficult trial to do. I don't know how big a fan I am of this. Does he need to do any of this?
Let's put it this way. I don't think you're gonna notice a difference.
I know, like
I guess that's my thought process behind this is you're gonna be what you're doing is you're physically moving your speakers up, basically.
Yeah,
you're moving them up so they're in line with your ears, which is something that is desirable. But presuming that you're sitting in the front row, which I don't know why you wouldn't be, and that the speakers are angled up and towards your ears, anyways, I have never ever had a problem with thinking that the sound is not coming from the screen.
Right.
I mean, I would think that he wouldn't either.
Where I could be getting behind this is he didn't say this specifically in his email, at least I don't recall it, but maybe he's looking to follow our common advice of actually, because right now he has a CinemaScope screen, a 2.35:1 screen. If he's thinking he wants to go to a 16:9 screen, as we always recommend people do, then it would make sense because he doesn't have room for a 16:9 screen that is as wide as his current 2.35:1 screen. So if he wants to keep the same width but go 16:9, he physically doesn't have space to do that unless he takes away the stage that is holding his current speaker. So maybe he's thinking, well, that's what I'm going to do. Now I need to move my speaker. If I put my speakers below a 16:9 screen that is this same width, they're going to be almost on the floor. So I would rather, if all of that is the case, that totally makes sense to me. And I'm certainly not against it. And yeah, if you have to put some holes in 1 layer of drywall, their ports are firing out into unfinished part of your basement, you'll lose some bass extension, but it'll work, it'll function just fine, and you don't need to put an enclosure behind the speakers on the other side. So, I mean, that's
going to completely change the dimensions of his room, though. I mean...
Well, you could do a good seal.
Yeah, you'd have to do... Okay, so my thought process is twofold here. If you wanted to still get the bass that you're supposed to be getting from the ports, the rear ports, these things, you could either build another false wall, not false, but another 1 layer of drywall some distance back.
That's farther back.
Farther back, and then just have everything open behind the screen. And
he did mention he doesn't really have space within the unfinished space to put up another wall.
Right. Or you could leave that. You could just take down your I guess your false wall, I guess is what it is.
It's not really
but it's not a false wall.
false.
It's take down that one layer of drywall,
Yeah.
and then you open everything up to what's back there. But now the dimensions of your room include those dimensions.
Include
back
the
there.
unfinished portion. You don't see it, but it's still part
It's
of the
there.
acoustic space.
Right.
Yeah, I
Which
see
would
where
mess
he's coming
everything
from
up.
and why
Yeah.
he's chosen not to do things that way. That
Yeah.
does all make sense. No, I think what he wants to do is fine. Just be aware that you might have to fiddle with the crossover from your speakers to your subwoofer again, because that will change because you're no longer getting the contribution of the ports.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine.
Yeah.
Justin and JR, apparently.
They're related.
So Justin
the
has...
questions.
Oh, they're not the people?
Not the people.
Just the questions.
Just the
Okay.
questions.
You don't know. Maybe they are. Justin has a full surround sound setup with a Marantz SR7010, but his life is such that he often has to use headphones. He's tried the only 2 listening mode options for headphones on this Marantz receiver, stereo and virtual, but neither of those gives the same sort of experience as his full speaker system.
Yeah.
What he wants is a Smith realizer, but at $4,000 is in the cards right now, so he thought he'd try some other piece of headphone gear. He found a used Essence HDACC, which I'm not sure what that is, but it claims to be 3 products in one: a digital preamp, a high-res DAC, and a headphone amp with selectable impedance matching. But what makes the Essence different from most headphone DAC amp combos is that it has an HDMI input and output. It says that it's compatible with Dolby True HD and DTS master audio signals. He used the unit he bought. The used unit he bought has an HDMI 1.3 input and output, so it wasn't going to pass through any 4K or HDR signals. So Justin used an HD Fury Vertex. Wow, this is complicated.
Yep.
That way, his Oppo Ultra HD Blu-ray player can continue to output 4K HDR video with the HDCP 2.2, which the HD Fury passes along to his display, and then the HD Fury can create a second HDMI 1.3 signal that gets sent separately to his Essence headphones DAC amp.
Yep.
Then he wanted to know what would be the very best audio output setting to use on his Oppo, so he wrote to Essence, and while they were very polite, the response he got back confused the heck out of him. The response had a lot of nonsense in it.
Yeah, I'm not going to reprint the whole thing because it was long.
I don't doubt it, because this whole thing sounds interesting. But some choice bits include saying that the Oppo should be set to bitstream because setting the Oppo to LPCM would be a lossy signal.
That is flat out false, but
flat out not true. It is about as not true as you can get. And the only true HD and DTS HD master audio are lossless. The website description even claims that CD is lossy and compressed, so it can't play very loud.
Yep, that is.
And that's why you need their 24-192 upsampling, because it makes it louder, apparently.
Yep, that's their claim.
And what the Essence would do is de-embed the full range left and right channels only.
Yeah.
It would de-embed them. You're just going to play the left and right? So what's the point? And they said nobody needs a decoder. Well, you do if you want to hear the dang thing, but okay.
If you have you ever had a Dolby Digital
001011101110111, that's what you're going to hear.
Have you ever had a Dolby Digital decoder screw up on you and you get that horrible sound that comes out? That would be why you need not just a decoder, but a functioning decoder. But anyway, they said nobody needs a decoder.
Yeah, they went on to claim that down mixing the center and surround information into the left-right channels will make this music sound congested.
Or complete, but
to each their own, and that Dolby and DTS are just algorithms to add EQ for special effects so they sound unnatural for music.
Uh-huh.
So yeah. In any case, but by the way, the minute I got that email, I would have taken that device and put it right back up on Craigslist, baby. I don't want to plug this into my system for fear that it catches the audio.
There was
file.
no way I was going to reprint everything they said and go through it one by one, because it was enough horribly wrong information that you can just throw out their response. It is pointless to try. I mean, yes, could I have found one or two things that they said right? Yeah, that's almost always the case, but it was so bad that Justin, just ignore the response you got from Essence. Way too much of it is just completely wrong. Like, not a little off.
Gibberish.
Fully wrong.
Yeah. In any case, he tried setting his Oppo to bitstream output, and he did select the True HD or DTS HD master audio soundtracks on the Blu-rays he tried out, and all of the sound, including dialogue, seemed to be there. But then he checked what his HD Fury Vertex was sending, and it showed that the audio output going to his Essence was 24-bit, 48 kilohertz, 2.0 LPCM.
Yeah.
So the decoding is being done on the other side, basically.
It's being done in the Oppo, as it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll explain
So what is
more.
going on?
Yeah.
Can we please clear up this confusion for him? He thought he had a handle on surround sound, but these Essence guys have thrown him for a loop. Yeah.
And I don't blame you.
I don't blame you for being confused, because that response, just a little bit, it broke part of my brain.
Yeah, no, that was that. So please just completely put out what the Essence guys said. Put it out of your brain, because there's no way to even come back from that and correct it. Let's forget about that. But what is going on here
so
now?
You have
actually,
to decode. Go ahead.
Yeah, the manual for this Essence device is not so bad. It actually says right in there that when it comes to Dolby True HD or DTS HD Master Audio, it can pass it through. Because it does have an output, right? You can put this thing in line. So you take your Blu-ray player, you plug its HDMI output into this Essence, you plug the output of the Essence into your regular AV receiver. When you want to use headphones, you don't turn on the AV receiver, you just rely on the Essence. When you do want to use your AV receiver, you don't have to physically take the Essence out of the signal chain, it can send things through. Now, not 4K and HDR, because this is old enough that it was a version 1.3 HDMI, but it can pass through Dolby True HD and DTS HD Master Audio. That's all. That's all it can do is pass it through. It has no decoders built into it.
Yeah.
It has no decoders built in. It can only play back PCM, 2-channel PCM. That's all it can play back. So the Oppo, thankfully, is a smart enough device to detect that what you have connected it to is a device that has no Dolby Digital, no True HD, no DTS HD Master Audio decoder built in. Just like if you plugged your Oppo directly into a TV that only does stereo. It would detect that all this device can handle is stereo. So it is smart enough. The Oppo was smart enough to go, well, I'm going to decode the audio and send out what the device I'm connected to can actually handle, which is 2-channel PCM. That is what happened, Justin. The Essence is doing nothing besides taking PCM, which is your raw, undecoded, uncompressed digital audio, 2 channels of it, and it's turning it into analog. It is doing digital analog conversion and then amplifying it for your headphones, and that's what it's doing. Now, it's
probably upsampling it too to 192.
Oh, it's probably upsampling.
Whatever.
I mean, I don't doubt that that's what it's doing is upsampling to 24-bit 192 kilohertz, but it is not doing anything that your Marantz SR7010 cannot do.
That's true.
Your Marantz SR7010 can do everything that this Essence is doing and more. But as far as headphones goes, it can do all the exact same things just as well. There's a possibility this Essence has a stronger headphone amplifier built into it. That's what you're getting. That's the benefit of this thing, other than all the rest of the gobbledygook they gave you. It's the headphone amp. And if your headphones are hard to drive, which I don't know which headphones he has, then there is a benefit, or can be a benefit, to having a headphone amp. Yeah, that's
Every signal before it gets sent to an amplifier has to be decoded into PCM.
Yes.
It has to be.
At some point.
Has to be. It either happens at your receiver, it happens in your external device, it happens at the source, has to happen someplace. And, like Rob said, these devices communicate with each other, because if you don't send the right signal, then you don't get the right sound out. So if you were to plug your Oppo directly into your TV, you would get 2-channel stereo out of your TV.
Unless your TV had a Dolby Digital 5.1 decoder, as some of them do, many of them do. Right. And then the Oppo is smart enough to go, well, I'll send it 5.1 Dolby Digital because that's what it can handle.
That's right. And then the TV would take that, decode it, transform it down to 2.0 because that's all it can output.
Yep.
Or it could send the 5.1 back down to your receiver.
That's right.
Via audio return channel,
or optical if it's just 5.1 Dolby Digital.
Sure. And it would say that too. It would not say, "Oh, I can handle DTS master audio," when it can't. It says, "I can handle. These are the things I can handle. Give me the best one." Yeah. So everything else is it's all happening one way. Now, if you think it sounds better,
right,
well then it's the amp.
Exactly.
Nothing else. It does.
It's not upsampling it, because you know what? Your Marantz can upsample too. So
Yes.
it's not upsampling in the DAC. It is certainly not the preamplifier section, because all the preamplifier section can do is take 2-channel PCM and send it to the DAC. So it's really, I mean, it can alter the volume level, right? So that's really all the preamplifier section can do there. It's not a decoder. It's not doing it, but it can pass things through. That's its compatibility with True HD and DTS HD Master. So if you're hearing a difference that you like, I am willing to believe that it has a stronger headphone amplifier than what's built into the SR7010. That is totally possible and very well could give you a true audible difference.
Yeah. I often equate upsampling to, you wrote a report, it's like 5 pages long, and then you printed it like 5 times and then collated it so you get the first page 5 times in a row, the second page 5 times in a row. That's what upsampling is. It's like it's still the same stuff. It's just more of it. Does that make it better? No. I mean, it certainly doesn't make it worse. It just makes it more. So, all right, JR. Says he just found our podcast and he's really enjoying it. But did Tom used to put out a recorded audio show before there were podcasts? JR could swear he used to listen to something similar with a voice that sounded like Tom's over 10 years ago. Deja vu? No, we never put out anything.
That was probably AVRant. AVRant has been around for more than 10 years, and I was not always here. Tom was around with a woman named Dina and then a woman named Liz before I ever joined the podcast. That is entirely possible. You were over 10 years ago listening to AVRant.
So this is I started in May of 2009.
There you go.
So, that's this May will be 11 years.
There you go.
Yeah, so we're almost to a dozen. So anyways, JR has a 7.1 system with all Mirage speakers driven by a Denon 3310 CI receiver. CI stands for custom installer. It just means it had pre-outs and a couple other little things that custom installers
like an RS-232 port.
That's right, because no one else can do anything with that thing. He uses an Apple TV 4K, and he has a family subscription to Apple Music streaming. His family loves the convenience, and they'll never give it up. All right, so he's an Apple. He's all in on the Apple. But JR doesn't think it sounds great. He tried Tidal, and he could hear a clear difference. But Tidal's UI was a lot worse, and nobody else in his family wanted to change from Apple Music. So apparently, he came across Essence.
That's right.
And they claim their upsampling DAC will vastly improve the sound quality. So how much of an upgrade will he get by inserting an outboard DAC in between his Apple TV 4K and his receiver? Does zero sound like the right number? Because that's how much you'll get. Remember what I just said about reports? What if you got the same lossy, not great sound, but instead of sending the ones and zeros once, you sent them 10 times? Would they be better ones and zeros?
Well, not only that, you already did the test of going from a lossy, compressed signal, which is what Apple Music is sending you. There is information lost in their signal. What comes out of Apple Music after it is decoded and played back is not identical to what was sent into the encoder. There is information lost, whereas Tidal is lossless. What went into their encoder is exactly what comes back out. You have lost no bits. You have lost no information. And that was through the device you already have, no external DAC. It was your Apple TV 4K playing Tidal directly to your AV receiver. Exactly the same signal chain, but different sources. And legitimately, objectively, different sources. One of them lossy, one of them lossless, and that's where you heard the difference. Inserting some external DAC into the signal chain cannot magically make the lossy signal into a lossless one.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen.
All these MP3 restorers,
Which, by the way, is built into your AV receiver. You could give that a try. It's going to apply an algorithm to the lossy signal to attempt to create sound that it think might have been chucked out in the encoding process. How good a job it does of that
it's just like an EQ. It's just an EQ curve.
Pretty close,
basically. So yeah, there's no. If you're not having, especially since you're using your Apple TV 4K for both services, that should tell you right there it's the service, not the device. So if you're not going to be able to recreate, like Rob said, the bits that were lost, if that's the issue. For me, I kind of have laissez-faire attitude about lossy music when it comes to streaming services. I look at it and say, this does not sound as good as it could. If I had the disc and I was playing the disc, this would sound better. But then I would have to have the disc and I would have to play the disc, and I wouldn't have the ability to do whatever the other things are that the music service does. In my case, I listen to Pandora, which is way worse than Apple. And of course, I only listen to it in the car, where it doesn't make any difference whatsoever because of the high noise floor of the car moving. And it gives me the ability to discover new music that I may not have heard before. It gives me that ability. I put in an artist or a song that I just heard that I thought sounded pretty good. It gives me more stuff like that. You get the convenience of being able to stream this music all over your house or into different places, different devices all at the same time. Couldn't do that before. What do you pay for that? Well, you pay however much the subscription cost is, plus it's going to not sound as good as it could have sounded if you had owned all the discs. So, anyways. Is there a significantly better streaming service than Apple TV 4K
device, not service.
that will that will make Apple Music sound way better? Maybe one with its own DAC. They all have their own DACs.
Yeah. So you've got to get off of the idea that the digital analog converter is the thing making the difference. I know
it really isn't.
I know that is out there. I know that is the thing that is marketed and pounded, and there are people who repeat it to high heaven. I understand that it is not the thing making the quality difference. The Apple TV 4K is taking the original signal that is being sent to it, the same signal that would be sent to any device that plays Apple Music, and it is passing it through untouched, essentially. Well, actually, no, that's not true. It is converting it to PCM. The Apple TV 4K does take the original signal and convert it to PCM, a process that has to happen at some point, but it remains completely digital. It has not been converted to analog yet. And that PCM digital signal is now sent out of the Apple TV 4K to your AV receiver. Your AV receiver performs the digital to analog conversion, and that is as good as Apple Music is going to sound. There is no device that is going to make it sound better, unless you could argue there are some devices that will attempt to apply some sort of algorithm to the original signal to alter that original signal in some way.
That's going to be hit or miss.
It's going to be very hit or miss. That is the only way you could argue it. Yes, objectively, it could change the signal. That is something some other device could do. But you know what? Your Apple TV 4K can do that. It has EQs built in, which you could optionally apply.
So what about upgrading his receiver to one with streaming music services built in? It's not going to make any difference. Yeah. Okay. The thing and we have said this before in this podcast, but it bears repeating. I know that people try to sell DACs as being a thing that makes a huge difference. DACs have been a mature technology, meaning, yes, technically they can be better, but they can be measurably better, not audibly better, for at least a couple of decades at this point. Right. They have not significantly changed. There
do exist digital analog converter chips that have noise in them. That does exist.
Sure.
It is possible, but you can get cheap digital analog converter chips that have essentially no noise. There's no reason it has to be expensive.
Yeah, so by trying to convince you that the DACs that you have are not good enough so that you'll buy another DAC is a sales technique, but it is, while you might be able to say we've got the top of the line DACs on the market, that can be objectively true.
Sure.
But audibly, it will make no difference in your life. And it hasn't for decades,
unless
as far as I'm concerned.
They've futzed with it to actually apply an equalizer to it, which unfortunately a lot of them do.
Which is not the DAC. That's not the DAC, though.
It's not the DAC itself. That's right.
Yeah, that's the other stuff that they put in. So, like we said with the last guy with the Essence or whatever, the amp can make a difference if you, depending on what you're using. But
the equalization can make a difference.
But not the DAC. The DAC is not it. Jason has the newest versions of the NVIDIA Shield and Apple TV, but they are both connected to his Den 4200W, X4200W. He's noticed when using his Shield, his receiver is always getting bitstream audio, mostly Dolby Digital Plus, for the various streaming services. But if he uses the Apple TV for those same streaming services, his Den says it's getting
That's right. Short for
multi-channel, which is PCM, right? So is he losing anything in terms of audio quality due to the Apple TV decoding the audio itself and sending out multi-channel PCM? So I'm going to speak from the Xbox because the Xbox
does
can
the
do
same
this
thing
as well.
Yep.
Yeah. So if you send out the bit stream, if you can get the bit stream, the raw bit stream from what it came in, then the receiver does all the decoding and then transforming the digital to analog conversion into PCM. It does that. Plus it allows the receiver to take whatever signal it is and say, oh, it's only 2 channels. I can make this into Atmos, or not make it into Atmos, but I can use all the speakers in here to do that. If you get sent out multi-channel PCM, then depending on how the encoding was done or how the device handles it, it will say, okay, if this is a 5.1 system, I am going to send out 7.1 channel PCM, which means that the front 3 speakers and the side surrounds will all get sounds. The back surrounds are going to be told to do nothing, which means the receiver cannot take your side surround information and then sweep it around the back. It also can't take that information and put it into your overheads either. So that can be a detriment when getting multi-channel PCM in.
Except, thankfully, the Apple TV 4K does this correctly. It will
see. There you go.
Unlike the Xbox One, where it locks you into, if you tell it to output LPCM, it'll lock you into either 5.1 or 7.1 at all times. The Apple TV is smart enough to say, here comes the incoming signal, whatever it might be. Dolby Digital 5.1, Dolby Digital 2.0, Dolby Digital plus 7.1, whatever it is, decodes it, but recognizes how many channels of information are in the original signal, and that is the number of channels of PCM it sends out. So you might notice that sometimes from your Apple TV 4K, the front of your Denon actually says stereo, because if the original signal was 2-channel, regardless of what codec that 2-channel was put into, the Apple TV 4K is smart enough to say, the original signal was 2-channel, I'm sending this out as stereo, and it will do that. So the Apple TV 4K always decodes all audio inside of itself, and any formats that are not Atmos, it will just output as PCM the correct number of channels of PCM for the original source. If it is Atmos, it is actually still outputting PCM, but with an Atmos flag attached that tells your AV receiver to go into Atmos mode, but it's actually still sending out PCM. So in the case of the Apple TV 4K, you lose nothing. It does it correctly. Something had to turn it into PCM, and the Apple TV 4K does it correctly. So you're losing nothing.
See, with the case of the Xbox, if you set it to bitstream out Atmos, it will take your 2-channel, put it into an Atmos container, but only 2 of your speakers will get any
playing
sound.
anything.
Yeah. And that's the joy of owning an Xbox One. Believe me, I am so ready to get an Apple TV 4K or something, or an NVIDIA Shield or something in here that is not one of those things, because I can't. I'm so. I mean, my wife and my family have no clue that I'm irritated about this, because I can't bring it up, because it would take a 2-hour-long podcast to explain to them, just to have them go,
yeah, even then,
Dad, really? So it just drives me nuts that I can't get the right audio out of the stupid box
without manually doing something to it. Yeah.
But I use it for so many things. I use it for so many things that I'm sort of like stuck with the dang thing. So he asks, does the multi-channel PCM audio signal bypass Audyssey and his receiver's audio processing, such as bass management? It shouldn't.
No, it does not. No, PCM is actually the easiest form of audio. It requires no decoding on the part of your AV receiver. It does not turn off Audyssey. It does not turn off your bass management. What you might have been thinking of is if your AV receiver has analog 7.1 inputs. 8 separate RCA plugs where the decoding was, say, done in your Blu-ray player and output as 8 RCA cables of analog audio. Those, in most cases, the 7.1 analog audio inputs on most AV receivers that have them, those tend to bypass all of your bass management and stuff, because it doesn't convert the analog back into digital, where it can apply things like Audyssey and bass management and then convert that digital back into analog. They typically just take the analog in and put it right off to the amplifiers without conversion.
Yeah, spit it out.
Yeah, no, the PCM is fine.
All right, James. James was referred to us by some folks on Reddit.
Thank you.
Do we need a subreddit? Is that something that
I am not going to manage it?
Okay. Who wants to be
or
listener
visit
of the
it?
week? Who wants to be our listener of the week that will manage
man.
our subreddit and send us questions from it?
Oh, God.
So that,
As though we need more.
because I feel like we need a sub. I was just thinking about this week because all the YouTube guys are like, oh, our subreddit is so exciting and whatever. I'm like, what's a subreddit?
Here's the deal I'll make you. If we start fielding questions from a subreddit, you get to add them to the topic list. I'm not doing any more.
That's fine. I mean, so no more
send them to
subreddit.
Tom.
Anyway, so Reddit. Anyways, James. All right. In James's living room, he's currently using a Vizio 36-inch 5.1 soundbar with his 55-inch Sony X900E. The living room is open at the back to his kitchen, open on the left to his dining room. Okay, it's very wide.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably also very deep, but the area that we're seeing here is very wide. It has two couches that are side by side with a little space in between. Behind the center space and the space between the couches, behind those couches, right there, where that blank is, probably being used as a coffee table, is a subwoofer.
Well,
of some sort.
It's the Vizio's subwoofer, which
it's the one that comes with it.
That's
so it's
right.
the base module.
Yeah, because the way it works with the Vizio soundbar is the left and right surround speakers. They are not themselves wireless. They have wires that go to the subwoofer, and then the subwoofer is wireless to the soundbar at the front of the room. That's how
okay. So the soundbar's at the front of the room. The sub is behind the couches in the middle. The rears are to the back corners of the
two couches. That's correct.
Yes. Okay. There we go. So he says he picked up a set of 5 Tannoy 6.5-inch in-ceiling speakers and an 8-inch Tannoy in-ceiling sub, as well as a Pioneer VSX 830 receiver. Should he use these Tannoy in-ceiling speakers and in-ceiling sub as a home theater sub in his living room?
I mean, I really want to say no.
I do too.
Really want to say no. I mean,
it's very hard to say that when you've already got the speakers.
I know, when
though.
you've already got them and you've got a receiver to drive them. But I mean, your front three speakers, your front, left, center, and right, please don't make those in ceilings. That's just not the way to live. I mean, I know people, including really rich people, do it, but no, in-ceiling front speakers, no. I mean, I could live with in-ceiling surrounds. I'm not going to lose any sleep over that, but...
And in-ceiling sub.
The in-ceiling sub, which is an 8-inch, 100-watt subwoofer. Mm-hmm. It is not sufficient for this space, and
no, it's not.
Issues it could potentially give you for... I mean, I don't know if what's above this space is your attic, but if it is your attic, you can't just put it in there. It has to have a fire-rated back, which I don't know if you got that. If it's not your attic above this space, then the issues you have of having an 8-inch sub and those front in-ceiling speakers just firing openly into the void, I mean, it's not trivial. This is not a trivial installation, and this is not the results.
It does look like this is right at the front of his house, too, so I don't know what his ceiling looks like or his attic looks
honestly,
like.
Honestly, the in-ceiling surrounds are like the only thing I'm willing to agree to out of this.
Yeah.
I know, it's kind of these... Yeah. I have this stuff in hand, but I'm like, just because you have it in hand doesn't mean you have to use it. This isn't what I would recommend. It's not what I would recommend. I know.
I don't know.
Trying to make some lemonades out of this, I know, but...
Well, what does the in-ceiling sub look like? I mean, like, is it a self-contained box? Do we know?
No, it's just an 8-inch driver.
It's just a driver?
It's just a driver. It's passive.
Oh, God.
It's just an 8-inch driver.
So you would actually need a dedicated...
I mean, with a little bracket with the dog ears so that it can go into a ceiling, but that's about it.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of this, man. I can't in good conscience recommend doing this.
So what other applications could we recommend if using them as living room home theater isn't what we recommend? Whole house audio?
Absolutely. They're perfect for that.
That's what I would...
Including potentially that in-ceiling sub. You know, if this is going to be a nice 2-channel music listening distributed audio type of thing, and you have a larger room, not this one, but a larger room elsewhere in the house where, like, you know, I'm really not getting any bass from just the in-ceiling speakers, I'm like, go ahead and use that in-ceiling sub there. I have no problem using these as a distributed audio part of your whole house audio system.
Yeah. So, if the in-ceiling subwoofer is passive and didn't come with an amp, what amplifier would recommend driving it? the cheapest one you can find? Because it's not going to. It's only
100
rated watts. You said
100 watts continuous, 400 watt peak is what it can take.
So
4 ohms, of course. A Dayton
Right.
Audio has a lovely little amplifier called the APA 150. It costs about $150. You can get it at Parts Express. You can bridge it so that it can actually continuously output 150 watts, which is more than you need. And it actually also has a low-pass filter optionally on it, so it's perfect for a subwoofer. So the Dayton APA 150 is all day long what I would hook up to this thing.
So if he's keeping the Vizio soundbar instead of using the Snowy in-ceiling speakers, he's been having some issues ever since a Sony firmware update. He was using the HDMI ARC connection, audio return channel connection, but now the Vizio soundbar randomly goes into standby, seemingly from a broken HDMI CEC command. Yay, HDMI CEC!
Isn't that fun? And unfortunately, you do have to have HDMI CEC turned on in order to use the audio return channel. So we can't tell you to just turn CEC off. It's not an option if you want to use ARC.
So is there a better way to set up his soundbar that will avoid this?
Your Vizio soundbar only does Dolby Digital 5.1 and DTS 5.1 anyway.
So optical?
Optical can carry those signals. You aren't losing anything whatsoever. And now you will simply turn on your soundbar and your television separately. But the optical output of your TV will feed you the exact same audio you were already getting via ARC. I know it's one more wire to run, but it's an optical audio. Those are easy.
Not only are they easy, they're really thin.
Really thin,
cheap.
really cheap.
And almost every one of the remotes that you own probably have the ability to clone power
and volume up
down.
Power
button, volume up down. So you could pick a remote and live with that one, or if you're really wanting to get fancy, you get yourself a little Harmony, and it could be the world's cheapest Harmony, and it would still do the same thing. So distributed audio for your these speakers, the receiver we really don't have a use for right now yet, but we can help you with that. And then optical for your connection, and therefore you will fix that. It's just the first time you're listening to this podcast, just to understand, we have two goals. One is to get you the very best sound, very best setup, very best picture, very best everything that you can get for your budget, whatever it is. And two, we don't want to waste your money.
Yeah.
Okay. It would be very easy for us to say, go ahead, put them in the ceiling. If you want to do that, that would be fine. And this is how you do it. And this is where you would put them. That is not going to give you the best sound. And
it's a non-trivial installation too.
Yeah.
You have to consider that. It's time and money for the installation part of it too, for results that I would not look forward to.
No, I have experienced it all in ceiling, and it is by far the least enjoyable home theater I have ever been in. So, and this was not a trivial place. I was in a very, very expensive home.
Yep.
That was not mine, and was not my friend's. It was a friend of a friend, and I got invited over.
$1.2 million for a Samsung The Wall, and then put all your speakers in the ceiling.
Yeah. So, we want you to get the good sound, and the Vizio, I think, is probably a superior experience than in-ceiling speakers.
Yeah.
So that's why we're saying that. Ray bought some DynaBox speaker enclosures to close off the backs of his in-ceiling speakers. They look like they'll block some sound, but the instructions say to make a hole in the side to feed in the speaker wire. Won't that hole allow sound to escape and defeat the whole purpose? Can we recommend a better installation method? Caulk around the wire.
Silicone is what I would recommend there. Yeah. Silicone caulk. that's what it would be. But which I thought the instructions actually mentioned, but that is what you're supposed to do. You do have to make a little hole in there, because otherwise there's nowhere else for the wire to go. I guess you could feed it in you wouldn't want to feed it in the edge where the speaker comes in, because that'll create a gap and it'll pinch the wire like crazy. So no, you make a little hole in the side of the back, and then you seal that hole with some silicone caulk.
Yeah. Jeremy and his wife live in France. Hey, France. Mm-hmm. He went to a local store and he used the free Klipsch design service to get ideas for his home theater. I bet that was informative and interesting.
Not that bad what they came up with, so I'm not mad.
Yeah, let's see what happens here. So he's trying to create a setup in a fairly... Now, before anybody gets like, oh, Tom doesn't like Klipsch. Not true. I also make fun of SVS's home theater
Yeah.
setup thing, and we love them. So I call them like I see them. So he's trying to create a setup in a fairly large room that will have the theater area on one side and be open to another large section of the room on the left. The total space is roughly 18.5 by 41, and the theater area would be over to the right, so you have a right wall with one window and a large window behind the seating, and then open on the left. He's thinking the back of the seats will be about 5.5 feet from the back wall, so it'll end up about 12 feet from the TV. Both he and his wife would prefer an in-wall and in-ceiling speakers, including the sub. That's the hard part. And he has a 5.1.4 configuration in mind. No. I'm sorry. No. Neither of them want to play the system very loud. They just want clear vocals. That has a lot more to do with how many reflective surfaces you have in here than anything else. Klipsch came up with a plan that uses all reference Premiere in walls and in ceilings. With only one side wall, they put the surround speakers on the back wall instead of on either of the side of the large window. This placement would have them roughly 10 feet apart, and they've kept that 10-foot distance for the pairs. For all the pairs of speakers, front, left, and right, the two pair of overhead Atmos speakers. Okay. I'm going to try to see what I'm looking at here. Okay. So the back speakers are on the back wall.
Yep.
The
Big
overhead speakers are just it looks like top middles, maybe. Or
I'm sure they're calling them top rears and top fronts, but they're just a little behind. So he's proposed an L-shaped couch, so they're just a little behind and a little ways in front of this L-shaped couch in a configuration that looks perfectly fine to me. I mean, they're essentially the four corners of the L-shaped couch, basically.
Yeah, basically. Well, three corners and one big blank space where the couch would be if it had an L on both sides. If it had an L on
both sides, that's right.
If it was a big square. And then the three fronts up front. Where's the red is the subwoofer.
The red is the subwoofer. So in the front wall, embedded in there, seemingly firing out the back into a dressing room.
Yeah. So does their design make sense? What should be the distance between the left and right speakers? Do they all need to be aligned along the left and right the way Klipsch has suggested? So the way that they've suggested this, where your front, left, and right speakers, your what they're calling surrounds, but everybody else in the world would call it surround backs.
Well, since he doesn't have side surrounds, they would end up being his surround speakers, yes.
Yeah, surrounds way in the back of the room there. And the overhead speakers are all in line. That is the way that Dolby would recommend you do it, and that's the way that we would recommend you do it.
And having them spread 10 feet apart when you're going to be about 12 feet from that front wall is totally right.
I think this looks pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it sounded he never outright said it, but it sounded as though he was hoping that they're either narrower or wider. I think narrower is what he was hoping for, although he recognizes that the ones on the back wall have to be at least that wide apart just to be on either side of the window. But it sounded as though he wanted... I'm inferring this, but it seemed as though he wanted at least the front, left, right speakers to maybe be close together. Maybe he's thinking, here's how wide my TV is, and I don't want my front, left, right speakers significantly wider than the TV. But honestly, what the Klipsch design people have done in this instance is correct. I agree with them, and 10 feet apart is absolutely not too wide when you're sitting 12 feet away.
Right.
That is the correct angle.
And, I mean, I said no initially to the overhead speakers, but the way they've done this so that I thought they were going to try to put the surround speakers overhead as well.
No,
rather
those
than
are
the
just
back wall.
4 Atmos speakers up there.
Yeah, this is about the only way that you can get a 5.1.4 with overhead speakers in a room like this.
And I'm okay with the compromise of your surround speakers end up behind you, because realistically, where else are you going to put them? If you're not willing to have a speaker on a stand or a tower speaker to your left, then this makes sense, and I think they've done a reasonable job. The only thing where we're going to quibble is, of course, the subwoofer. That's
okay. Yes, well, that's true. So as a local store recommended Focal 100 series in-wall speakers with the Yamaha RX-A880 receiver as their good system, with some Dolly Phantom speakers and the Yamaha RX-A1080 receiver as their better system. They pointed out how the Yamaha receivers could use wireless music cast speakers as surrounds, which doesn't apply here because everything's going to be wired.
It's factually true, but you wanted everything to be in-wall, so I don't really know why that would be a selling point to you.
Yeah, and they emphasize that the Yamaha receivers are particularly good for voice optimization.
I mean, they are good. I don't have any problem with Yamaha Avantage
I don't know that they're any
but they're not
better than anybody else, though. I mean,
yeah,
it's
not a
something- all you gotta
particular
do is-
standout in that area. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that there's been a competition in voice optimization.
Pretty sure this
ever.
store is a Yamaha dealer. That's what that is.
Do you think? So, do we agree with any of those recommendations, or do we think the Klipsch recommendation is the best? I mean, I like Dolly speakers. I've
Sure.
heard quite a few of them, and I've always liked Dolly speakers.
When it
as
comes
electrical
to in-wall and vocal clarity and not necessarily high output levels, though, like the Klipsch in-walls and the Reference Premiere series in particular, I'm like, that is a good choice. I wouldn't steer
You're not
you
sitting
away
particularly
from that.
close to these things. You're like
Yeah.
12 feet from your front wall, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what it is TV. And if you take the angles into account, you're a little bit further away than that to each of your front speakers. Your back speakers are going to be 6 feet,
Yeah,
7
they're
feet
essentially
behind
6
you,
feet
and
behind,
then we don't know how tall the room is, so whatever. But we know that with very little power,
Yes.
you'll be able to drive all these Klipsch speakers, which makes it easy for you to just pick the receiver that has the features
That's
you
right.
want and not worry about any of the power output that it may have.
And having that horn-loaded design in this open space, they're a bit more directional. It's all of it fits quite nicely. I like the Klipsch plan. And then on top of that, what they recommended in terms of AV receivers can't drive as many speakers as you want in your system. You said you want 5.1.4. Both of the receivers recommended by that local store top out at 7 speakers max. You would have to go to the 2080 in Yamaha's lineup to get you to 5.1.4. No model below that in Yamaha's lineup could do it. Now you could just go with a Denon X3600, which is cheaper than
He's
everything.
in France, though, right? This is the France guy still? Yeah. So
But
we
still,
can't
I
just say
mean,
accessories
I
for
can't
less.
imagine. No, we can't say accessories for less, but you can get a Denon in France. That's not a problem. The X3600, first of all, can power all 9 speakers that you want to do by itself. If you ever wanted to go to 11, it actually can be expanded, but you'd have to add more amplification to it. But the X3600 is where I would point you. It is cheaper than the 1080, but more expensive than the 880, but it can do what you want to do. So that's kind of a key thing.
Right. Right. And it's you said the 3600, right?
The 3600.
So it's going to have the XT32. So
it
it'll
has
have that,
XT32.
You'll know it has the best room correction. Not that it's going to make a huge amount of difference in here. We don't really know what the.
But you know
looks
what
like. I
can
assume
make
it's
a
all hard
difference in
glass.
here is dynamic EQ. Dynamic EQ could
Yes.
definitely make a difference because he mentioned they don't want to play it at high output levels. Dynamic EQ will keep everything that is supposed to be audible, and that is a nice feature.
So he says, should he use a Yamaha receiver with the Klipsch in-wall and ceiling speakers, or should he get a different brand? He says he likes Marantz. Get Marantz, done. That's
Well,
fine.
you could, but
Get
you'd
the
have to go all the
equivalent.
way up to the. What's the current model number? 6014 is the current model number, which is more expensive than Denon, which is the sister company of Marantz. So I still say get the X3600 Denon.
All right, so let's talk about subs and the fact that in-wall subs all suck universally. So, I mean, there's no real way of getting around that.
And this
They're
is a 10-inch
not
sub.
great.
The Pro 1000
Yeah.
is a 10-inch sub.
Yeah, in this massive space of what you
Yeah.
have here. Now, I know what you're going to say. We're not looking to
Play it
blow the
loud.
doors off the thing. Not going to play it loud. Yeah, don't worry. Not playing it loud is not going to be a problem
Yeah.
with a 10-inch sub in a wall all the way across the room from you.
You know what's worse
So-
than loud, though? Horrible distortion.
How about port noise and God knows what else? So yes, I would recommend you guys consider whether or not you're going to have a coffee table or a end table someplace near this setup, and get one with a nice gap underneath it, and buy it can be smaller, it could be a sealed smaller sub, and put it there. Just close to the couch so that you'll have some bass experience. You're never going to fill the space. You wouldn't want to, but at least then you would have some bass experience. Having that sub in the wall, across the room, that size, it's just it's never ever going
And
to keep up,
if
and
you're
I
getting-
don't trust it not to distort.
If you're getting everything else from Klipsch makes some very nice and
Yes.
reasonably priced subwoofers, because over in France, I'm sure SVS costs more than it does here in North America.
Right.
It's
That's why I didn't suggest that.
Yeah, it's probably not like financially responsible to tell you to get SVS when you're over in France, but Klipsch makes a whole bunch of very nice, reasonably priced subwoofers. I mean, I know you were looking at one of their in-wall subs anyway, but what you need is more output and lower distortion than what that in-wall sub can deliver in this volume of space. Even at low volume, you don't want your sub to be struggling to the part that it distorts. So get a nice Klipsch subwoofer. I have no problem sticking it all with Klipsch because they're not going to drastically overcharge you. And have it as like a side table for your seating, or maybe it goes in the rear corner. I mean, what's happening in that rear right corner next to that big window? Is there anything really happening there? You put a plant in front of it or on top of it, camouflage it.
Watch it bounce off slowly.
Yeah.
Right. Andy has a basement media space. He's painted the walls gray, and he really wants a projector with a 103-inch fixed frame screen, but the room is not fully dedicated to being a theater. It's not fully light controlled. It'll be dark at night, but he figures about half the time there'll be a significant amount of ambient light. Blackout curtains are your friend.
Mm-hmm.
He has an Epson 3700 projector, which can output a lot of light. It'll be 12 feet away from the screen. He's looking to buy the screen from Seymour AV. Which of their materials should he get, gray or ALR, which is ambient light rejecting? No. Can I just say no to both of those and just say white? Just get a white screen? Can we just do white screen?
If you really are going to have ambient light half the time, that's going to look poorly. It's going to look poorly.
It is so much cheaper and so much better to get some curtains than it is. I mean, the light rejecting curtains I got from Amazon were like $13 per curtain. I mean, that is...
I have a feeling it's not just outside light, though. I think they actually just like want to have some light on, but he still wants to use
put a big bar up and then just close the whole space off. I mean, I'm telling you, so much better than doing all this.
I mean, I'm not entirely. So don't go gray. That makes no sense. That just lowers your amount of light, and your black levels are a little bit blacker, but everything is still washed out and horrible looking. So don't do gray. If you were going to do this, and you're not going to take Tom's advice of just always black out your room and use a white screen, I am not entirely against today's ambient light rejecting screens. Some of them are pretty decent and don't look horrible in the dark. Seymour's is interesting. They've gone for very narrow left to right viewing. So they're rejecting side light with like their matinee black. Now they can rotate that screen for you and reject light from above and below, and then any light from the sides will still wash out the screen. But they've chosen to be highly directional, where you can either block light from the sides at the expense of then only having a very narrow viewing cone. You can't sit very far to the left or the right, or blocking from above and below, but then light comes in from the sides. My preferred ambient light rejecting screen, and it's right around the same price when you import it from Canada into the US, if that's the direction this is going for you, Andy, is a Loon Vision. Their Aurora ambient light rejecting screen is my personal favorite of ambient light rejecting screens, and it's sort of more uniform. Doesn't really matter where the light is coming from. It's not quite retroreflective, but it's close, and that's how it does its thing.
I prefer
might point you there.
That I prefer that he just decide. If you know where the light direction, with a majority of the light that's going to hit the screen, where it's coming from, you put a curtain up or something near the screen or at that source to cover that during these times, and then you have two different setting modes on your projector, which is, light in the room, no light in the room, and then the light in the room is the bulbs in high brightness mode. You crank up the brightness and stuff. Yes, okay. My door opens and there's light coming in from outside. It washes out the screen. 100%. Yes, I know. Could I somewhat counteract that by turning the brightness way up on, going more into a dynamic mode?
It would make bright things visible again, I suppose. Yeah. Never gonna get your shadows back.
You will never get your shadows back, but you were never going to get your shadows back anyways. So, I that would be the compromise I would make.
Yeah, because the irony is either of these screens, whether it's Seymour's or a Loon Vision's, the screen is going to cost more than your Epson 3700 did in either case. So that's got to be something worth considering, I would think.
Yeah. So, you could buy a whole bunch of curtains for the amount of money the screen's going to cost you. That's all I'm going to say. A whole bunch of curtains. Infinite Gary. How are we doing on time here? All right.
We started late,
what happens if... I don't care about that. What happens if you run Audyssey, but each time it tells you to move the microphone, you actually just leave it in the same spot at your primary seat? When he asked Audyssey directly, they told him to move the microphone as instructed. Don't be Gary. When Gary received advice from a couple different people at SVS that since he only has one seat, he would get better results by only using a single microphone position, what did we say? Well, okay, so what moving the microphone does is it gives you an idea of what's going on better idea of what's going on in the room. Okay, by only taking a single measurement, by leaving it in the same spot, you're taking the same measurement over and over again. I don't know that will give you better results, but what it will do, I think it'll give you the same results as only taking one measurement, and that one measurement, the one measurement is saying this is what this room sounds like at this point.
At this point, like just the little point of the microphone.
That's right. So if you want your receiver to have a better idea what's actually going on in the room, because if at that one point there's one weird little thing happening, but only at that point, then it will correct that one thing to the detriment of an inch to the left or right.
Yeah, Gary, do you have only one ear that you hold in a vice?
Yes.
No.
So I don't think you have to move the microphone a lot. I don't think you need to go from this seat to this seat. I think you move the microphone 6 inches to one side and 6 inches to the other side, and that sort of thing. Yeah. Then you get an idea of where you personally are seated, what is going on in that area. That's what you do, and that will give you the best results.
Yeah, I mean, I will go as far as saying I would never move the microphone more than 2 feet away from measurement position number 1. That is the most I would move it. I would have a 2-foot radius bubble at the most. Normally, I keep it within like pretty close to a 1.5 or a 1 foot bubble around position number 1. And in your case, since you only have one seat, like I'm totally fine with 6 inches one way, 6 inches another, but I'm not okay with one and only 1 point. I don't think that makes sense. Even if you're just like, I have 2 ears. I'm like, well, put them where your 2 ears are, if nothing else.
Right. Well, and even then, I mean, you wouldn't get what this does is eliminate any, help to reduce any false measurements or any measurements of
anomalous
at
that one location. Yeah.
So that it sees the things that are consistent across measurements and it addresses those. And the rest of the stuff that's anomalous, it just says, well, that's weird. I can't do anything about that. So I will address the things I can address. And that's what you're looking for, Gary. So just move the mic.
But a tight cluster is fine. I'm fine with a tight cluster.
What if you have 2 different listening spots in your room that you use on a regular basis? Should you rerun Audyssey and have separate configurations for each specific listening location? The answer is no. You should have one for the prime listening location within your room, which is in that center area, between the 2 speakers. Yeah. That's where you should take your measurements, and that's the only measurement you should take.
If you only had front, left, and right, it is where the phantom center would be. That is mic position number 1, and where you end up sitting relatively, that is neither here nor there. That you start at that position where the phantom center would be, regardless of the seats.
So that is the answer that Audyssey would give you. That's the answer that we're giving you. So your response is, but I sometimes sit way over here. Shouldn't I calibrate so that Audyssey is trying to fix around that 6 inch, radius from where my head is over there? And I mean, you could do this. You could make those measurements. You could take those measurements. You could have a separate thing for it. I don't think you're going to get as good results as you think you're going to get. I think what you're going to end up is because of if you're like off to the side, like near a wall, because of all the things that are going to be going on over there, Audyssey is then going to do much less to make your sound equal across in the entire room, especially your bass across the entire room, than it would have done if you had taken the measurements where you were supposed to.
Yeah.
So you'll put it over there. It'll say, there's so much anomalous stuff going on here. I can't do much.
Right.
So it does nothing.
Yeah.
And then you end up with, you might as well have just turned it off.
Yeah.
So that's my answer. So once in a while, some movies have some really low dialogue, and Audyssey Dynamic Volume actually seems to be helpful. Is dynamic volume damaging the sound quality in any way? Is it vital to keep it turned off? I mean, there are no hard and fast rules here. So for those who don't know, dynamic volume, what it's doing is it's essentially dynamic range compression.
That's
It's
right.
trying to keep all the volume same. So loud noises become quieter, quiet noises become louder. With things that have a lot of dynamic range, and there are movies that are like this.
Sure.
One that comes to mind for me is The Professional, which has like 2 explosions the entire movie.
Right.
And everything else is people just whispering to
Yep.
each other, and then Gary Oldman screaming, "Get me everyone!" And then your speakers get blown out. Does it damaging the signal? It shouldn't. I mean, what it's doing is just changing the volume. It's not. It's not changing the frequency response. It's changing the volume. So it shouldn't be damaging it, but it's certainly not giving you the presentation back in the way that it was initially intended.
But I have no problem using it. I mean, there are
me
absolutely
neither.
scenarios where it makes sense. You're like, I'm watching at this.
I need to use it more.
Yeah.
I mean, when I'm lying on my couch and I know I'm about to fall asleep,
Yep.
I need to reach over and hit the dynamic volume button,
Yeah.
because I do get woken up by people, by not commercials, because I don't watch commercials anymore, but by people yelling.
Yeah.
Or people, or something happening on the screen that's loud, and I need to use it, and I don't.
No, I have it turned on my parent system and never turn it off because my mom hates it when, particularly like music in TV shows is always way louder than everything else, right? The action scene comes in and the music kicks in and it's way louder. And she hates that and ends up reaching for the remote and turning the volume down. And then people start talking again. She has to turn the volume back. I'm like, well, you know what? We can avoid that by just turning dynamic volume on. I'm like, I got no problem with that. It makes
I need to turn it
life
on to my
easier.
parents. I haven't thought about that, but
Yeah.
you're right. I need to turn that on at my parents' house, because they're always the volume. Them being able to hear dynamics is the most. Hear voices is the biggest thing. So he asks, if you're trying to evaluate how good a room is for listening, would we agree with him that it's actually more about how things sound at low volumes rather than how things sound at high volumes? Demos at trade shows or whatnot are always loud. Is that to cover up that maybe they don't sound so good when they're quiet? No, it's usually to cover up how much external noise is going on at trade shows. I mean, that's why they're loud. And loud is impressive. People find loud to be impressive. Loud
If
sells.
you want to draw them in
okay?
from the hallway, you're going to have to be loud, aren't you?
Yeah. No, I don't agree with anything you said here, really. A room should be good at low volumes. It should be good at high
Right.
volumes, but it should not really make that much of a difference one way or the other. The high volume does help cover up some issues like noise floor of the speakers or noise floor going on outside or other things. Certainly helps with dialogue intelligibility if that's one of the things you're worried about, is just physically being able to hear things. A loudspeaker you can hear better than one that's real soft. So,
I mean, I would certainly agree that if you're evaluating the room itself, is this a good listening room? That would include that it has a low noise floor. Like something that I would evaluate as a good listening space would have a low noise floor because I would
tell everybody to be quiet and I would clap.
Yeah.
I mean, I would need that test to know whether or not this is a good room, but it's not, only playing things quietly in the room that tells me that it's good. I mean, I am going to listen to that reference volume.
Because if it rattles when it's loud, that's not good.
Yeah, that tells you something too. So Gary spent many months experimenting with the addition of surround back speakers to his dedicated theater. He's got plenty of room behind his seat, but in the end, he felt his original 5-speaker setup delivered the more pleasing experience and actually had a stronger surround presentation that did a better job of convincing him he was within a bubble of sound. That seems contrary to what anybody might expect. Dude, you do not listen to me on this podcast. More speakers ought to do a better job of surrounding him, right? So do we have a theory as to why he didn't feel that way in his case? I don't feel that way most of the time. I think surround back speakers, more often than not, don't do a whole lot to help out in my envelopment of the sound.
And in his case, He has a fairly narrow room. His side surround speakers are quite close to his seat. So,
Yeah.
I mean, where you have a very wide room and your side surround speakers are way over to your left and way over to your right and not behind you at all, like maybe a little bit, but barely at all. And then you want the sensation that something is coming from directly behind you. Well, it's very difficult for side surround speakers that are truly to your sides and far to your sides to create the
Right.
illusion that something is directly behind you. And that's where surround backs will fill in. But when you have actual surrounds that are quite close and they are some distance behind you and close to you, well, they can create a phantom center image behind you quite easily. So
Right.
the notion that you're going to get this difference by having actual speakers behind you in your scenario is a lot less. That's what I would explain it as.
I don't know how many times on this podcast I have to recommend that people not have surround backs before people start to understand that I don't necessarily value surround backs all that much.
But there are certainly cases where it is the only way to make it really sound like something's behind you.
That is true. But how many times am I like, they're like, should I have two pairs of surround speakers or one pair of surround speakers for my front row and then surround backs? I'm like, two pairs of side surrounds. I just think that overall, that experience is better than surround backs in many cases. And it's simply because of what Rob said. Our rooms tend to be narrow and long. Okay? Very rarely do we come up with somebody who's got a wide and long room, where their side surrounds are way to the sides. And then there's nothing behind them for, 10 feet. Well, then surround backs make sense in that situation. But most of the time, our surrounds are very close to us, they're at the corner of our couches, or right, very close behind us. And the surround backs are not that much further back than the back of the room, 3, 4, 5 feet the most. Well, it just a lot of times it doesn't make that much sense to have them. So that's just me. Lastly, he says at CES there was a mention that Filmmaker Mode on TVs can also change the color space. Will that mess up the colors if they've been set by a professional calibrator? Well, this professional calibrator should be calibrating your TV so that when it says, give me this exact shade of blue, that exact shade of blue comes out of your TV. So if the Filmmaker Mode can change the color space, the TV is just all your calibrator is doing. It should be, unless this is something different than something else. It should be making sure that when a signal comes in that says give me this blue, that blue comes out. So therefore, whatever else they're doing, it shouldn't. The calibration should only help.
I think it's because of the specifics of this. Because Filmmaker Mode has certain standard settings that it will be using across all televisions that support Filmmaker Mode. There's really only two color spaces that we're dealing with consumer content. We're dealing with Rec 709 for HD TV, and we're dealing with Rec 2020 for 4K HDR. Now, within that Rec 2020, we're really only using a subset of its possible colors, the DCI-P3 color space, but it's still happening within the Rec 2020 color space. I suppose if you were inputting standard definition, we might be dealing with, the old SEMP-DC color as well, or Rec 601, if that's possible, but that hasn't really been mentioned. So we're really only dealing with two color spaces, and all they were talking about at CES is that it will make sure that it switches between Rec 709 and Rec 2020, because there are modes that just stay in Rec 2020 all the time, the so-called wide color mode that you will see on some TVs, and some settings, sometimes the vivid mode that the TV comes out of the box set in, is set to the wide color space. So even regular HD TV that ought to be in the Rec 709 color space is being shown in the Rec 2020 color space. But if you activate Filmmaker Mode and it's HD content, it'll automatically switch to Rec 709, which is correct. We would expect any professional calibrator to have done the same thing, to have put your TV into a picture mode that switches between 709 and 2020, depending on the type of content, and then having calibrated the colors. Is it possible that your calibrator didn't do that? It's theoretically possible, but that's the way they ought to be doing it, so it shouldn't mess anything up if that's what you're doing. In fact, your professional calibrator will probably now calibrate the Filmmaker Mode, because they'll say this is doing all of the switching correctly, and for the very fine tuning of this particular panel, because of course Filmmaker Mode is software, it can't say this particular panel has been measured and tuned to be absolutely as accurate as it possibly can be. That's what you would hire a professional calibrator to do now.
Graham went and saw it.
What
is wrong? What is wrong with me?
I don't know. That's not a difficult number right
either.
there.
It wasn't it. I couldn't say the word saw. I don't know what that was. What it didn't feel like saw when it came out of my mouth. My tongue was in the wrong position. Graham went and saw 1917 at his local theater. I'm very excited about this movie. I very much want to see it. First of all, I don't like war movies just in general. I just do not. But the previews were fantastic, and then I found out it was meant to be shot as a pseudo single shot thing. Where they shoot the whole movie as if there's only one camera and it's
running
following the people the entire time. Then they use some tricks to make that happen, but that sounds very exciting to me. He said the sound was very impressive, and he thinks the cinematography is going to win a lot of awards. He thought the movie itself was phenomenal, and he's certain it will become a favorite for demoing and testing out home theaters. But he knows that at his local theater, the best cinema in his area, really struggled with all the dark scenes. Graham can imagine how great it'll look on the OLED, but projected at his movie theater, it didn't look its best. There are lots of articles on YouTube videos that talk about how OLEDs are used in the professional grading and mastering suites. Is it possible that using OLEDs to make the content is actually leading to movies looking worse in most theaters, as though you actually need an OLED in order to see them the way they were intended? And here is why we all love home theater, because it's better than movie theaters. What do movie theaters have over your home theater? They have a large space,
sheer size, no question there,
and which means that it's the bass is all they got to do is pump a whole bunch of bass in there, and it tends to be pretty even across the entire thing, and they have a massive screen. Well, we have massive screens at home now. We have good bass at home now, and we have images that we can control. If we have light control in our room, or if we just wait till nighttime to watch stuff, we have the ability to get reference quality nearly images out of our displays. So why do we go to movie theaters? I don't anymore. If I can help it, I try real hard not to go, because I don't wanna have to sit next to people who are got their phones and checking them for Facebook and Instagramming their experience as they're going through it. I don't want to listen to people opening up their candy bars and eating their Jolly Ranchers or whatever the heck it is. And I don't want to all the chomping of popcorn and people whispering, "What did he say?" No, just shut up. Shut up and go home. You missed it. You missed it. You don't get to be
this is like
right now.
that famous Game of Thrones episode from the last season where there was all the complaints of people. The whole episode was a gigantic war scene in the dark, and so many people were like, "I can't see anything. What is going on?" All the people who were watching on OLEDs in the dark were like, "Looks fine to me." But everybody else who was watching their $200 LCD with no full array local dimming was like, what is going on? All the shadow detail is gone, and this is nothing but shadow detail. I haven't seen this movie yet, but I'm obviously willing to believe that, sure, it's a war movie, that things are taking place in the dark. I think it's an interesting question, because, we've heard a lot of mastering people themselves saying how excited they are that they now have these large format displays, not a 30-inch display where you can't show it off to other people. You have these large format displays where they can have a number of executives or the director and other people, producers and that, coming in, watching what is very close to exactly what they're seeing on their mastering monitor, but in a larger size. And they're excited about these OLEDs. And they are using them, and they are taking advantage of the perfect black levels and the greater granularity you have in the just above black levels that HDR provides with the 10 or 12-bit color. And they are excited about those things. And I think they are perhaps overlooking all the venues and LCD TVs out there that just flat out aren't able to show all of the shadow detail that they are seeing in their mastering suite. I think that's a kind of a reasonable thing to consider. The translatability, right? Except in video,
So
not audio.
here's my thought on it, and that is, would I rather them master to as using as good a monitor as possible, so that what they're putting out is exactly exactly what they want that will look just exactly the way they want it to look, or do I want them to master to a substandard TV that is more like what everybody else has? And if you have the really good TV, you're going to see artifacts, or maybe there's going to be things that are weird about it that you don't really understand because they couldn't see what was happening in those blacker than black areas. I'd rather them master to the best quality that's out there. So I think they should be doing what music masters do, which is master on their reference quality speakers and then playback on the Yamaha crap speakers that mimic everybody else, just to make sure that they're still getting a fine quality product.
Yeah, that the
master
most
on the
vital
OLED
things are still there.
Yes, master to the OLED, watch it on a crappy LCD, edge lit display,
or even just,
and make sure you could still see it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
A projector in not completely ideal conditions. Because even your commercial movie theater, they have to have the exit lights on. It's not pitch blackness in there, and there is a little bit of washout happening on the screen just from the exit lights and the aisle lights that, by law, have to remain on. I think the translatability is something worth considering. Making sure that at least the most vital thing, not every detail. You're like, you know what? You want every detail? You're going to have to use an OLED. Okay? But that at least the most vital things are still visible. I'd be in agreement with that. Growing pains.
That's fine. All right, we'll do one more, then we're done. Mike is currently using DefTech speakers up front, the bipole BP8020 ST towers, and an CS8060 HD center. He's got a Marantz SR7012 receiver, and he'll be getting a pair of SVS PC 2000 Pro cylinder subs. He's thinking he might like to get some new front speakers as well. His front runners are either the SVS Prime Pinnacle towers with their Ultra Center, or the Paradigm Premier Series 800F towers with their 600C center. What are our thoughts on those? Which ones will be a better upgrade for him as DefTechs, and will they pair well with his Marantz receiver? Well, without knowing exactly how far away you're sitting, I'm going to assume that if the DefTechs were up fine, then the other two speakers will be fine with your Marantz as well.
Yeah, because none of these are difficult to drive speakers. All of them are quite efficient. They're all in the sort of 92 dB for 1 watt efficiency range. So if your DefTechs were playing loud enough without any distortion, your other two candidates will be fine. So that part's easy.
So if you've got bipole speakers up front, your towers there. First of all, do we really need towers in this situation? My answer is almost always no. So
it sure sounds like he wants them, though.
But it sure does sound like you're connected to this idea of having towers. So I would challenge that. I would at least ask you to reevaluate whether or not towers are a thing you need. Most of the time, they're not. If you're getting subs of this quality anyways, I would. You certainly don't need the bass out of them. If you're not sitting further away than 12 feet from any of these speakers, I'm going to say you don't need towers, and you could get away with bookshelf speakers, which is a little bit of a savings of money right there. But other than that, the Prime towers, I've heard the Prime speakers. They're very good speakers. The Ultra Center I have not heard, but I'm sure it's great. The Premier Series I have not heard. What are your thoughts on those?
Yeah, I'm not as so overall. Still a fan of Paradigm. They still make very good, very neutral speakers, but they have played the market more with their current lineup. They've gone cheaper on their entry-level monitor series, outsourced the manufacturing to China as they've had to do to get that price point, come down in the parts quality a little bit, but to hit a lower price than the monitor series ever did before. And then the Premier series is more expensive than the monitor series used to be, but it's basically the performance level of what the monitor series used to be. I don't think the value is as high anymore. And then they make a huge jump to their Prestige and Persona series, where they're like, well, we sell way fewer of these to a much higher end or higher dollar clientele anyway, and they've drastically increased the prices there, so they're not nearly the value that the old Studio and Studio Reference series used to be. I don't blame them. That's business. That's what they've had to do. But I don't consider the Premier series, the drivers in there are not impressive to me at all. That mid-range driver, especially, which they've conveniently hidden behind a fancy grill. Not that plastic is a bad material for drivers, but for a mid-range driver at this price point, to have a plastic mid-range in there, I'm like, what's going on? That's what the old monitor series used to be at half this price. So I'm not super impressed by those. Whereas the Prime,
these are $1,000 each speakers.
I know.
This is $2,000 for these towers.
That's what I'm talking about, man. Not super impressed. So the Prime Pinnacle, on the other hand, I'm like, yeah, that's some impressive speakers. If you're gonna do this, I'd be going Prime Pinnacle.
How much? So those are the Prime Pinnacles are how much? They're about $1,000 each.
They're a little less than that. I think they're $1,700 for the pair, something like that. They fit in between because the Ultra towers are $1,000 each, exactly, and then these slot in between the Prime towers and the Prime Pinnacles, and the Prime. Ultra.
There's a lot to consider here. You've given us two options, and in Rob's mind, and I've got no cause to doubt what he's saying. There's a clear winner here. Yeah. But at this price point, I mean, if you're already considering $1,000 each for the paradigm, you can go with the Ultra. You can go with the Ultra towers.
Although their form factor, exactly like what Gary Yakubian was describing, that might be the thing that's keeping them a little bit out of the running.
If you switch to bookshelves, then suddenly all this, you're saving a lot of money on top of that. But then you open yourself up to a huge
$2,000 per pair of bookshelf speakers. Woo! There's a lot of choices out there.
There's a lot of choices out there, sir.
Stellar.
And I am not comfortable just saying, yeah, get these Prime Pinnacle towers right away without you having explored some more options, because while I think you will enjoy them, I think that there are so many options that are available to you. You got to at least take a look at some of them. So, who are the ones that ship round trip free is what? Aperion
SVS,
does still?
Aperion. Does RSL do both directions? They don't have anything in this price range anyway.
No. And then you've got everything that you can see locally, whatever that is. And then I would start searching on the forums, and I rarely say that. I would start searching on the forums and look for those $2,000 a pair speakers, and don't limit it to tower speakers.
I don't know about forums, but but yeah, I mean, if you're going
and the reason I would do is just to get the idea of what's out there. Then I would start going to look just to see what's out there. Say, okay, somebody suggested some company I've never heard of before. Let me go see if they've got a dealer. They don't. Let's see if they have a forum. They do. Let's see if they have a meetup thread, or a.
But I mean, this price, if you're
post.
Going bookshelf, you could be considering like Kef R series, which you're gonna be like, that's real good. The Kef R series towers won't be $2,000 a pair, but the bookshelves are in that price class. The Ascend Sierra RAL speakers get into this price class. There are big options. So I mean, if you're like, I've done all my research, I've done all the auditioning I want to do, I'm down to these two choices, which one are you saying? Then I'm going to say Prime Pinnacle in this case. Okay?
Right.
And honestly, if you got them, I know it's not like I think you're going to open them up and listen to them and be like, oh, these are awful. I'm like, no, they're going to be real good.
Yeah, they're going to be good.
If you haven't done the exhaustive search, then there are things to ponder.
There is an exhausting search ahead of you, that's for sure. Yeah.
You should be able to find some Kef R series somewhere. They are ubiquitous.
I could go right now. There's a dealer in town, and that's what they do.
That's right.
They sell you Yamaha and Klipsch. Now Yamaha and Kef is what they sell. I mean, they have one listening room. It's the size of my couch, basically, and they have like Kef R series right across from you, and that's it. It sounds great. So I would take a listen.
So we have an entire podcast left. We got 9 long questions left on the list. So you know what? Should I run through?
Next week we won't be doing a review of a movie that takes.
That's
20
right.
minutes.
So hopefully we'll play some catch up. But do you want me to read all 9 names?
Yeah, read them.
Okay, Jeremy P is on the list with a very long question. Joe T comes after that. There's lots of scrolling. Damien D. Jonathan R. He's from the C Den, your favorite named theater. Tim
right.
C. Let's see, lots of pictures that I have to scroll past. Oh man, that's going on a while. Ben F, Andrew L, who wrote to me on Twitter, Don G, and finally on the list, Nathan D. There we go. I made it all the way to the end.
All right. We'll get you guys next
Yes,
week. And
we will.
anybody who sent a question in the last couple of days, you're going to be on the list as well.
Yep.
We want to thank our listeners of the week. That includes our 105 patrons over at patreon.com, including Andy, Mike A, and Mike H. Thank you to our 105 patrons.
Yeah, Andy, Mike A, and Mike H, thank you very much for being among our 105 Patreon patrons. Patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you would like to sign up for an automatic monthly donation.
I thank DJ of the Bright Side Home Theater podcast for giving us a shout out. Thank you, DJ.
Yeah, DJ, that was very nice to hear. So thank you very much. Appreciate that.
And thank you, Patrick, for taking me out to lunch and introducing me to your lovely wife. So you guys, hope you had a safe flight back. And yes, so they play Harry Potter Wizards Unite, which is that AR game. I also play it.
Right.
So we've been sending each other gifts, which is something you can do. And I am not always the best at sending gifts, so don't get mad if I don't do it. But it's kind of neat. I don't know. I'm such a geek. I can't stop being geeky. I'm always good. Like,
I'm sure you asked him if he plays Pokemon Go first, and he's like, "No, but I play the Harry Potter one."
No, I'm actually off the Pokemon Go.
Okay.
I the minute that Harry Potter came in, I dropped Pokemon Go. Pokemon Go turned into a full-time job. People who play that game, it's insane the amount of stuff you have to do. Was done. So thank you, Patrick.
Very nice. Thank you, Patrick, for perking up Tom's day there.
For AVRant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.